Okay, now here we go. Oops. All right, here we are. Welcome everyone. Happy New Year. Um, you ended 2024 with me presenting, and now you're starting 2025 with me presenting. So I hope that's okay. Um, it just was the way the schedule kind of went, and I plan on having a different speaker in February. So for today, here's our agenda, announcements, bit of 2024 in review, not much. I'll just mention a couple of things. And then I'll give my presentation on Sherlock Holmes's favorite weapon, the weighted hunting crop, and then we'll have some discussion. And I learned a lot as I did my research on the weighted hunting crop, and I'll be happy to share it with y'all. And I'm very, very excited with what I've learned and why it makes absolutely perfect sense why it was Holmes's favorite weapon, as I'll explain. Okay, but before that, let's talk about some announcements because we got plenty because it's January and this is a busy month for us. And then I'm sure a number of you will probably, I'll pause because I'm sure a number of you will have some announcements as well. First of all, of course, the Sherlock Holmes Society of London is having the Society's 72nd annual dinner at the members' dining room in the House of Commons on Saturday, January 11th. So right around the corner. And RSVPs were due on December 6th. So hopefully everyone here who is attending or planning on attending has already made the proper arrangements. It looks wonderful. I've never been to the London dinner, but I look forward to going someday after I retire, which will be in the not so distant future. So which is good. This is really good. Um, and of course, for us on the other side of the pond, we have the BSI weekend coming up, and I hope to see a lot of you there. Um, so a couple of things just to point out, or people had asked me to mention. Hal Glatzer, who gave a talk to our group in 2024, I think in May, he shared his play he did last year. He's going to be doing another audio play on January 15th called A Musicale in Mrs. Hudson's Parlor. Um, it will be recorded and we can maybe watch it again here if you can't make it. Unfortunately, I couldn't get an early enough flight. I thought I could make it, but I can't. But I look forward to viewing the recording and I'll see if we can get him on again maybe because it was a lot of fun when he was on this year. And then there's also time, you can see by January 8th to register for the Ash Wednesday dinner. So that's also, but you got to hurry up because registration is closing pretty darn soon. And one of my highlights, one of my favorite events, the ACD Society Doylean Awards and the Wessex Cup race starts at 11:15 on January 16th. I will be there presenting the Fiction and Poetry Awards this year. And there's phenomenal winners. It was this year, I think, was probably the hardest time the judges had determining the winners. It was great. I look forward to seeing this year's Wessex Cup winner, and I actually won the first Wessex Cup, so I'll bring my little trophy and we'll do a little photo of the winners. Um, and if you're there, please make sure to say hello to me because I always love meeting 5 Miles members in person. And I think it's always a lot of fun, and I look forward to seeing it. It's also live streamed, so if you aren't able to be there in person, you can watch it on the ACD website. Okay, and I can send out the link to it after we're done in a follow-up email. All right, another thing for me, my announcement, the second Luther Norris Parade Street Irregulars dinner is going to be Thursday, January 16th at the Grand Central Oyster Bar. Um, it's a lot of fun. It's right after the BSI guest lecture talk. And so we'll be in one room, Spo will be in another. It'll be a pretty crowded Sherlockian Grand Central Oyster Bar that evening. And if you are there, we did the registration closed January 1st, but if you are going to be at the BSI weekend, you don't have plans for Thursday night, send me an email because I think we could fit one or two more in without an issue. So just let me know, and we'd love to have you join us because it's open to all Sherlockians as well as Solar Ponds fans. All right, another thing everybody can attend. Um, the Literate Agents, which is a science society run by Mark Jones, which you all probably know him from doing some Doyle. He'll have the online meeting for the Literary Agents. And since it's online, like I said, everybody can attend. It's 10:30 to 11:30 Eastern time on that Friday, January 17th. And the topic is going to be Doyle's The Land of Mist at 100. And if you've ever read The Land of Mist, it's Challenger's last book. It's an interesting one. It's really kind of I don't know, an excuse for him to promote spiritualism, but it is an interesting book. And if you haven't read it, I recommend it just because it's an interesting one. Um, all right. I'm almost done. Don't worry. Saturday is the Merchant's Room. And of course, Belanger Books will have a table. If you're there, say hello to Brian and me. We'd love to see you. And we'll have all of our latest titles from 2024. And it's just always fun. So, yes, if you're around, please, please, please stop by and say hello. Okay, a couple of other non-BSI weekend announcements. Steve Doyle wanted me to share with you the BSI Canonical Conclave. It's an event made up of multiple BSI Scion societies, and they're brought together under the official recognition of the Baker Street Irregulars. You can register online for this event, which takes place at the Woodstock Club in Indianapolis on April 26th. And the cost is $65 per person. Okay, so it's a one-day thing. I do believe they have a hotel, though, reserved. You want to spend the night. And it looks really like a great time if you can make it.
Two hotels.
What's up? Two? 2 nights? It's 2 days? Okay.
Two hotels is what he's trying to say.
Oh, a hotel. Okay, gotcha. Perfect. Okay. Last month I spoke my book, Sherlock Holmes Crime for Christmas, and I was pleasantly surprised to find a review of the book on I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere by member Joanna Draper Carlson, who is here today. So thank you, Joanna, for that nice review. And I'm glad you enjoyed the book. It was a lot of fun. And I did send it out to everybody as a Christmas present to the 5 Miles email list. So if you didn't get a copy and you'd like an ebook copy, just let me know and I'll send it to you.
You might want to mention that it's got a really great concept of all the stories being broken into chapters for the month of Christmas. So one day you read a story and the next day you read the solution. So you can play along if you want, which I really liked about it.
Right. And thank you. Yes. And I talked about that last month. I actually based it on Encyclopedia Brown format. So that was actually what I based it on. And I am working on another one. The Strand was interested in another one for this year. So I have started kind of mapping that out. So probably have a follow-up this year. Depends if I can think of enough stories. Okay. And lastly, speaking of story for me, I have a story in the latest issue of the Strand magazine. And they gave the story a nice description. They said fans of detective fiction will savor Belanger's The Adventure of the Hapless Brother, where Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson investigate the death of a loyal Baker Street irregular. I still haven't gotten a copy of it. Still waiting for them to send it. They don't rush it on that. But if you've read it or if you have it, let me know what you think. Please email me because I'm just curious to know. 'Cause sometimes they change things around quite a bit. So, and when they edit, but I'm pretty excited for it, and that's that. All right, I am going to pause because I'm sure with it being January, there's going to be quite a few other announcements. I didn't announce things that I thought the registration had closed for, but let me pause and let's see who has something. Anybody have anything to share? Oh, Steve Mason does, and so does Tom Burns. Okay, Steve.
Yeah. A couple of things. If you are going to the BSI weekend and the distinguished speaker, if you're not a fan of oysters like I am, afterwards, there is a group of us that go to the Red Flame Diner, which is literally right across the street from where the distinguished speaker is going to be. We don't have any formalized thing. It's just a group of people that just have fun. And I think we had 16 to 18 last year. So if you would rather just go to something simple, just you're welcome to do that. I also wanted to announce that tomorrow is the start of the 55th year of the Crew of the Bark Lone Star meetings. And what we are really excited about, we have our special guest speaker is David McGregor, who has written 3 stage plays that have been put on around the country. And he's going to be talking about what it's like to write a Sherlock Holmes stage play. But we also just found out, and we just got it worked out, that at the beginning of the meeting, we're going to have Glenn Maranker basically interviewing Nicholas Meyer about his book and what it's like to be a Sherlockian. So they're going to talk for about 30 minutes also. So we're really looking forward to it. So if you would like to join us for that meeting, send me an email and I will send you the link. We do not put the link out on a public website anywhere so that we don't get bombed, but if you'll send me an email, we will be happy to let you come in. And it is at 1:00 Central tomorrow. This is the start. So we hope to see y'all there. And I will also say we are very proud of the fact that we just issued out our 9th book for the Crew of the Bark Lone Star called Mr. Holmes's Neighborhood. And a few people on this call actually submitted stories for it, and we very much appreciate that. And we will have it up on our website as a free PDF file that anybody can download. And then we always put our books up on Barnes and Noble. We'll probably put it up right after the BSI weekend. And it's for sale for cost only. We don't make any money off of them. So it'll be about $6. So that's it.
Hey, thank you, Steve. David McGregor was actually just in Colorado last month because Gold in Colorado put on one of his Sherlock Holmes plays, and I got to go to the cast party afterwards. And really great guy, very, very fun plays. They're actually really funny. And so if you haven't read or seen any of his work, I highly, highly recommend it. Okay, Tom.
Yes, this is not Sherlockian, but it is mystery related. I have a new book out. It's on Amazon. It's called To Keep Our Honor Clean. And it is the story of the founding of the 3M Detective Agency, which is the agency that I use in my Natalie McMaster's books. It's set during the Vietnam War and then in 1988. So if you like a good detective story and a rousing pulp style thriller, give it a look.
Excellent. Very good. Did I miss anybody else for announcements? I suppose we're past the deadline for some things. Shayna, is there something we're not past the deadline for?
Yeah, so I'm in charge of the William Gillette Memorial Luncheon, and currently we have about 100 confirmed reservations, so we still have some room left.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully everyone in this group who wants to come has already made their reservation. If you've done so, you should have received confirmation either via email or through whatever payment app you use to send your money. If you have sent me money and you haven't heard back from me, email me after the meeting and we'll sort that out. And yeah, just a reminder, it is Friday the 17th at noon at Connolly's on 45th. And hopefully I will see some of you there.
Right. Excellent. Very good. Anybody else? Oh, Joanna. Sorry.
Well, since we're talking about events, April brings 221 BCon. in Atlanta. And it's not a typical Sherlockian event of the kind we've been talking about. It's media, queer-friendly, very open, diverse, all interpretations welcome Sherlock and related fandom convention. If anybody has questions, please feel free to contact me. I am excited that Belanger Books will be distributing there or exhibiting there. So that'll be exciting to see.
Yes, we're very happy to sponsor it. And
Yes.
Yes.
this could be the last one, correct?
Well, last year they announced it would be the final, but we're trying to put some procedures into place. I don't want people showing up thinking, "Oh, well, you said it was the final and you're continuing," but we're trying to put some procedures in place to take so much of the work off just what's come down to two organizers. So it may or may not, depending on how well things go. But I'm helping to try and continue it onward because I think there's not a show like it elsewhere.
Yeah. No,
So,
I
and
think that's great.
it's 221bcon.com for more information if anyone's interested. Or like I said, I'm happy to take questions, email or offline or whatever.
And it's
So-
in close proximity to several Waffle Houses in the event that you want to become a waffleier.
Having grown up in the South, I don't really get the whole fascination with the Waffle House, but hey, you do you.
All right. Fantastic. And what are the dates for that, Joanna, again?
Oh, that would be a good question for me to have figured out before I started talking about it, wouldn't it?
I'll send it out later.
It's April 11th through 13th.
All right. For 11th through 13th.
Yes, and it's very easy to get to. Everybody flies, everything flies to Atlanta. And it's one of the airport hotels, so it's very easy to get to. It's very much in the hotel, so you walk down to the main room and there's a whole bunch of other Sherlockians hanging out. I also want to say, if you don't mind my continuing, that I did write a piece in the latest Sherlock Holmes magazine about the reactions of several international attendees coming to 221bcon, because I thought that was a really interesting perspective, since the magazine is headquartered in England.
Yep.
To talk about how they dealt with those wacky Americans.
Very nice. Excellent. Cool. All right. So before I give my presentation, I just wanted to say briefly that 2024 was a great year for this group. We started with Robin Rolls giving a presentation. We had Anna Behrens lead at least one meeting, so it gave me a chance to take a break. And we had different things like how Glatzer's play was presented. And looking forward, I know Tom Burns also, just thinking of people here presented. But going forward, I realized that 2025 is our 5th year anniversary. So when we get to that month, we'll do something special. I haven't decided yet. We'll do something. That'll be cool. So that's coming up. But yeah,
Maybe 5 years from anywhere then.
Yes, it's right. Well, 5 years from everywhere. I like that, Larry. That's good. All right.
Oh,
Brian.
oh, and if we're talking anniversaries, then this year will also be the 10-year anniversary of Belanger Books.
Oh, that's true. Yes. We started 10 years ago. And we're not broke yet, so that's good, right? All right, all right. So let's talk about this weapon here. Let me start sharing my screen again, because to me this was really interesting. So Sherlock Holmes's favorite weapon. So I'm going to talk a bit today about what the heck this hunting crop is, and a bit about what it isn't. Look at where the crop appears in the canon. And lastly, speculate as to why this is Holmes' favorite weapon. Okay, and there's Jeremy Brett holding the hunting crop. I believe that is from Red-Headed League, from his version of it. So, okay, so what the heck is this hunting crop? Because that was actually a question that I had. So we're going to start by defining our term. And according to Jonathan Upton, in his excellent article, What is a Riding Crop and How to Use One, he explains that hunting crops, they're specialized tools used in the traditional sport of fox hunting. So their crops are distinct in design and functionality, and they feature unique elements such as the hook, which is what you see that the man holding there. So it has the hook, which sets them apart from other types of riding crops. Okay. And so that you probably need a little more than that. So hunting crop parts. So basically, it's a pretty versatile tool. The head or hook, which you see there, it's used to open gates without the rider needing to dismount from the horse. So if they're hunting, and this is really for fox hunting, okay? If they get to a gate, they can stay on the horse, use that hook to open it, and just keep riding along. The shaft, okay, or what we call the shaft or the crop, the long part you hold onto, is used to control the horse. So you lightly tap the horse on the shoulder, or there are other parts you could tap, but the crop is actually pretty short. So most of it tends to be forward that you do tap the horse, and that would help direct the horse. So if you want the horse to stop, you might use it to stop the horse. You probably would use more the whip part or a different crop to get the horse moving faster, but you can also do that too. So that's pretty much what the crop is used for. Then there's this whip part at the end. And that's really kind of an interesting piece of it, because what you do with the whip is you use it to control the dogs, the hounds that you have with your pack. So you're on the horse hunting the fox and you have your pack of dogs, and you use the whip to make sure, one, they don't get too close to the horse's hooves and so cause issues or even nip the horse. And you also use it just to kind of herd them. Okay, so, and it's not like you're actually whipping them, it's the noise, the crack of the whip that actually makes the animals move. Okay. Now, not all hunting crops I discovered have the whip. A lot of them do, but some don't. And it's possible, as we'll see in the next slide, that Holmes actually had either two different hunting crops or perhaps one that you could remove the whip. Possibly. So let's take a look in this next slide, and I'll show you why I'd say it's possible he could have two different ones. Okay. So here's some of the pictures from two different stories. Okay. So one of them here is a case of identity, the one that says he took 2 swift steps to the whip. Okay. And the other one is from the 6 Napoleons. And you can notice the different styles of the crops. If we're taking, we have to assume we're saying the illustrations are part of the canon. So that's debatable, and we won't get into a huge debate about that here. But clearly, in a case of identity, the riding crop had a whip attached because he took 2 steps to the whip. I mean, that's pretty clear. But the other ones, especially 6 Napoleons, it doesn't mention the whip. It's not mentioned in any of the other stories in the canon with the crop. And that's why I'm wondering if Holmes perchance had 2 different ones. It could also just be that they didn't mention the whip in the other stories, but I would think it's a good chance that he had 2 different ones. But that's, again, we won't really get too much more into that yet. You guys can debate me in the discussion part after if you'd like. All right, so let's start with Holmes attacking James Windibank, because that's the one with the whip, and you can see the other picture down there of the whip portion of the hunting crop. And this scene is when James Windibank, in a case of identity, is angry at Holmes for discovering that he and his wife are tricking his stepdaughter, Miss Sutherland, into believing in this fake Hosmer Angel character they've created. And he gets all indignant with Holmes when Holmes tells him he figured it all out. And he says, well, hey, I've broken no laws. And Holmes says, and again, here's where we got the whip part. He says, the law cannot touch you, said Holmes, unlocking and throwing open the door. Yet there never was a man who deserved punishment more. If the young lady has a brother or a friend, he ought to lay a whip across your shoulders, By Jove, he continued, flushing up at the sight of the bitter sneer upon the man's face. It is not part of my duties to my client, but here's a hunting crop handy, and I think I shall just treat myself too. He took 2 swift steps to the whip, but before you could grasp it, there was a wild clatter of steps upon the stairs. The heavy hall door banged, and from the window we could see Mr. James Windibank running at the top of his speed down the road. So the fact that Holmes mentions the whip, he took 2 steps to the whip, that definitely implies, in my opinion, that this hunting crop had a whip portion, okay? And that's what made him reach for it. So again, most likely this hunting crop has a whip. I think it's hard to get around that, okay? Now, the second, or actually, I went a little out of order. Technically, the first story to mention the hunting crop is the Red-Headed League, okay? And so in this story, when Holmes and Watson, along with Merriweather and Agent Jones, go after John Clay, Holmes decides to take with him his hunting crop for protection. And when John Clay pulls a gun on Officer Jones, it says the light flashed upon the barrel of a revolver, but Holmes' hunting crop came down on the man's wrist, and the pistol clinked upon the stone floor. And while Pageant doesn't illustrate this scene, unfortunately, it did show up, as you can see, in this 1909 illustration by Fonseca, as well as in the 1906 illustration by Friedrich. And whether or not we should, again, accept these artistic interpretations as fact is certainly debatable. In my opinion, it does make sense that Holmes would have a crop without a whip if he's in a vault, because it would be really hard. It's possible that it would be hard to navigate the whip in the vault. I mean, he could, I guess, have kept it rolled up. But again, it seems like that could have gotten in his way. So a vault would definitely be close quarters, and having a whip attached to the riding crop, would be an issue if he really needed to just jump out and smack the guy's wrist, which he did. Okay. And then lastly, here's the third and final story, believe it or not, with the riding crop is mentioned with Holmes using it. And that would be the 6 Napoleons. So in this one, this is probably, in my opinion, the most noted example, because this is where Watson tells us that Holmes, and he says, and this is a quote, picked up the loaded hunting crop, which was his favorite weapon. So this is the one where we find out it's his favorite weapon, and it's the only time Watson mentions it's a loaded hunting crop, which is important. Because this image over here, the one of the 3 sticks to the side, is from the Bartitsu Society webpage. And it's an illustration from a 1914 Manu France catalog. And it says in it that the central crop features a, quote, steel core fully covered with braided leather with a lead-filled head, and can also be used as an implement of self-defense. So in this time period, the hunting crop was not only used for hunting, okay, but clearly if it was loaded, you wouldn't want to probably use that on your horse. And so it became a formidable weapon. And while Holmes uses the hunting crop in just 3 adventures, there are actually other cases of characters using the crop, which would show that it was a pretty well-known weapon in this time period. So another famous one, which involves one of the most famous lines or segments of the canon, comes from the Speckled Band, okay? And there we have Dr. Roylott threatening Holmes with the hunting crop. And it said there, of course, this is one of my favorite parts of the canon, but "Ha, you put me off, do you?" said our new visitor, taking a step forward and shaking his hunting crop. "I know you, you scoundrel. I have heard of you before. You are Holmes the meddler, Holmes the busybody, Holmes the Scotland Yard Jack in office." So there's a reason the Speckled Band is considered the best Holmes story, because quite frankly, those words are like poetry. It's such a wonderful scene. But again, you can see that that hunting crop in this case is a weapon, and in Paget's illustration, this particular one, again, does not have the whip portion attached to it. We also have our good friend, Mr. Brown and Silverblaze. Okay, in this one, it says that when this is the part just before Holmes tells Brown, hey, I know what happened to Silverblaze. I know that you hit him. In this part, it says that a fierce-looking elderly man strode out from the gate with a hunting crop swinging in his hand. And in this one, there's two different, again, illustrations. One's from the French and one's the Paget. One, in this case, does have the Paget one looks like there isn't a whip, but clearly in the other one there is. The swinging part, I think it's open to interpretation, whether or not they had the whip attached. But again, it could be either or. Then we have Solitary Cyclist, that Woodley approaches Bob Woodward with his dangerous riding crop, again swinging in his hand. That's right before Woodward blows him away. It's a good thing. Okay. But again, there's that riding crop. You can see it's in his hand there. And the last time that a crop is mentioned, a weapon crop, there are crops that are food crops. The word crop actually appears 23 times in the canon. I did a search. But the last time that we have a weapon is in the Hound of the Baskervilles. And unfortunately, there were no illustrations of this particular scene. These are kind of these, I don't know. This came from a 1922 French edition. I think they're kind of wacky looking. But anyway, in the Hound, Watson asks Sir Henry, hey, are you armed? And Henry replies, I have a hunting crop. So again, that implies it was a weapon used in this time period. So now we come to the really big question. Why a weighted hunting crop, right? This thing's kind of a goofy thing, okay? Or it looks kind of goofy. So out of all the weapons, Holmes uses, the single stick, the fencing sword, the guns, why is the hunting crop his favorite? And honestly, I actually got I couldn't get a hunting crop. I got a riding crop just to try this thing out. And to be honest, from a martial arts perspective, this is a phenomenal weapon. This is excellent. When I started using it, it made absolutely perfect sense why Holmes loved this thing. So let me tell you a couple of things. So let's start with the head or the crook. This is what we call in martial arts a hard weapon. So in martial arts, there's hard weapons and there's soft weapons. A hard weapon is meant to hit hard areas. So this is meant to smash a hand or break a skull. It's meant to hit hard things, where a soft weapon's meant to like stab a person in the belly. So like a sword would be a soft weapon. If the crook is weighted, that means the user, and we saw this with Holmes, can decide, am I going to disarm my opponent by like smacking him in the hand, which Holmes did, or am I going to use it as a lethal weapon? Because if you hit someone pretty hard with this thing, you could really cause some damage. I mean, just think, if that Napoleon head Holmes smashed was someone's real head, you can imagine that person's head would have been smashed. So that's a really important thing. The other thing that's really cool about this particular weapon is that hook. I mean, you can use that hook to disarm someone as well. If someone came at you like with a whip or a chain, you could hook that hook around it, and if they're off balance, pull it out of their hand. That's a really nice thing to have to yank a weapon away from someone. So it's a very defensive and offensive tool because of that. Then let's talk about the body, okay? So we know Holmes was really good as a single stick fighter. So if the shaft is also weighted, you could use this as a pretty strong bat or a stick. I mean, you could hit opponents really hard with it, and that would cause some major damage. But the other thing that's really interesting, and when I was trying the crop, is the fact that you could also have the head weighted, but not the shaft. And so in that case, it's flexible. Now you might say, well, what's the advantage of that? Well, the advantage of that is if you hit an opponent with the heavy head, if it's a flexible shaft, that would absorb the blow. If you don't have something like that, if it's like if you've ever tried sword fighting or even hitting a baseball with a baseball bat, it goes right through your wrist up into your shoulder because it's a hard thing. But with this, if it's a flexible shaft, that would absorb most of the blow, and Holmes would be fine, or or I'm getting to 50, so it helps my shoulder a bit to use something like this. So that would be another way it could be advantageous. And lastly, the whip itself. The whip, it's a whip. Whip. So, I mean, you could use it to distract an opponent with the noise if you wanted to, like throw the crack to make him dodge and then hit them with the shaft. You could actually use the whip a la Indiana Jones as a weapon itself. You could actually use it if you're in close quarters just to strangle someone. I mean, there's lots of things you could use with this. So in the end, when I really thought about it and practiced with this weapon makes a lot of sense why Holmes would like it. He could use it in many situations. The only disadvantage I can really see with this particular weapon is it's not going to really be a weapon of surprise. If you had a loaded cane and you're walking with that, or a loaded walking stick, people might not expect that as a weapon. You can't really walk around with a hunting crop without it looking like a hunting crop, like we saw with the Grimesby Roylott image there. You wouldn't really use it to you're not going to be unless you're riding a horse. It's going to be unusual for you to be walking around with this thing. So that's the other thing just to think about there. So all in all, to me, this made perfect sense why Holmes, this would be his favorite weapon. And really, I think we all could probably walk around with hunting crops and be a lot safer. And that concludes my talk. So I'm going to pause to stop sharing, and then I'll open the floor if anyone has questions for me or comments. It looks like there's a lot of comments in the chat, but thank you very much. All right, anybody have anything? Tom Burns has something. I see his hand up. And you can, let me just say, you could put the hand raise feature if you want to make it easy for me to see, or just unmute and ask a question or make a comment. Tom.
Yeah, I don't have a URL for it, but a while back, I found a company that markets hook canes as weapons. The thing is actually very nasty because where the hook is, there is a spike that is sharpened that protrudes up a couple of inches, so it can be used as a stabbing weapon. And they claim that it is a medical device, so you can take it anywhere. They can't, try to walk into the hospital with your hunting crop and they could take it away from you. You have a weapon. Aha, but this is not a weapon. It's a medical device. What did Gandalf say? You wouldn't take an old man's stick, would you? So I just thought that was very interesting. I wanted to use it in a story, but I haven't had the opportunity yet.
No, that's true. And I actually found, I mean, I had with this particular talk, there was lots of information I found, but there was actually, I found a hunting crop that had a sword inside it, a hidden blade. And again, I was kind of like, that's interesting. Because again, the one that, like I said, the one thing that kind of surprises me about the crop is the fact that there's not really a reason to be walking around with it, whereas a cane there is. But if you are walking around with it, there's a lot of uses for it. So I like the medical device. That'd be a reason you could have it. Well, I have this as my medical device. Larry, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, I was going to ask, first of all, what's with that loop at the end of the ones that don't have
if they don't have of whips, they've got loops. And it
That's
makes me
the
wonder,
handle to carry it with. And you could also, if you had it like in your belt, you could grab that to pull it out. That
but
was the point of
isn't
that.
the head what you carry it with? Rather than, oh, the
Uh,
loop you put it in your belt, I see. All right.
Correct. You can put it on your belt.
Okay.
And I did like there was a couple of things I didn't get into, and maybe some people here who are horse riders might know. Like but why that they might have that. But the other thing is like I didn't really go into this much because it's America, but I know General Patton carried one of these crops, and I'm not sure why the generals carried one.
Well, it seemed
So-
like these officers had crops. I don't know if they were riding crops,
They
Correct.
call
but
They
they always had crops under their, when they walked like this, and
Yep.
in the old movies anyway,
they
Yes.
call swagger sticks.
swagger sticks. Okay.
Military.
Okay. Interesting. Like I said,
Okay.
there's still more research to be done. I'm not done really necessarily, but I think I got most of it here. Oh, we got an answer. The loop is for putting your arm or wrist through it while you're on the horse. This is from Lauren. Thank you, Lauren. Excellent.
I just had one thing to ask was that I wonder, could the whips be detachable? I wonder
Say
if
that again?
could the whip be detachable? Could it be, could you carry one with whip or without whip?
And I was looking at that, and it did not appear that I didn't find any that were like that. I found some without a whip that said the whip had fallen off or it had broken. I didn't see any that were detached, but I was wondering that myself. I just haven't in my research found any that was
Okay.
the case. But I think it's possible. It seems like maybe you could screw it on because you wouldn't want it to be something that could be too detachable because if it's a weapon, you know.
Yeah, but it would
that
make
would
sense,
be that could
that way
definitely put
it
you at a
would
distinct
explain why
disadvantage.
Holmes sometimes had one and sometimes didn't,
Yeah.
on the circumstances.
It also could very easily be that the whip was mentioned only in case of identity, but he did have the whip on in the other ones. The artist just did not include it. It doesn't say he didn't have the whip. He didn't have it like wrapped around his hand. We just don't know for sure, for certain. Other questions or comments? Lauren, you are a bundle of information. If anyone is seeing the chat, which I haven't actually had a chance to see too much of it, Lauren's giving us all sorts of things. Yeah, I don't know if I'd say it's useless, Lauren. This is interesting, but you put in there that the TSA regularly confiscates sword, canes, and sticks, because people have no idea that it has a sword in it. So that would make sense. You'd have to look into it.
Just found a bunch of loaded hunting crops on eBay.
Yeah, there are quite a few on eBay. They're quite expensive, which is why I hadn't gotten any. I just got like a regular riding crop, which I was surprised that there's tons of them on Amazon. And then I found out after I got one that they're not really for riding crops anymore. They're kind of like an S&M kind of thing, which was really weird. I was kind of surprised when suddenly I got these weird ads on Amazon afterwards. I was like, oops. But the actual, like, you can use it on horses. So that was a surprise for me. Brian.
So he obviously, Holmes liked this weapon. He carried it with him in several stories. Why didn't he have it in the final problem? Why didn't he bring it to the Reichenbach Falls?
I would say it's not. I mean, it's a good question. But in the case of the conflict in the Reichenbach, neither one of them had weapons. I mean, that was a sign of respect, in my opinion. And I've talked about that in my BSI article on that particular conflict, that they were gentlemen. And even if he'd had it, he would not have used it. Because Professor Moriarty had just given them the time to write his little goodbye to Watson. That's my take on it, that was a very British of the time period conflict, because there was a lot of respect towards one another at that Reichenbach scene. And there's lots of, obviously, we could go into a whole other tangent on what the heck actually happened at the Reichenbach.
Sandy has her hand.
Sandy.
Yeah. Although I would believe that if they were walking in on the mountains, they would have walking sticks, and that would be using their head. Well, he's not going to have a crop in one hand and a walking stick in another. I mean, that's a little bit of overkill. So why would he take a crop with him when he had his stick? And he didn't use the stick on Moriarty because they decided no weapons, as you say.
Yeah, that would be my guess. I agree with you, Sandy. It would not have been versatile in the snow. Like if you slipped with a cane, it can help you. I mean, the one story I was thinking about was Illustrious Client, because in that one he's stick fights, and I think this would have been a really nice weapon to have in that particular instant when the guy gets him from behind. He's like, I was doing okay, and then the guy hit me from behind. So I thought this might have been a better weapon in that particular case, but it also could have been they just, you know. He doesn't take it everywhere with him. The redheaded leak. He very specifically thinks of I might need this. And again, I think that was a really smart one because he kept John Clay alive. And saved Jones's life because he hit him in the hand. So that was a really nice weapon in that particular case. And of course, Napoleon's used it to smash the skulls open, or the heads, not skulls, sorry, heads open. So that made sense too. So I think in some cases, it might be his favorite weapon, but that doesn't mean it's going to fit every situation. There's multiple situations. There's other times when he took a gun. So it just depends on the situation. Larry again?
Just one more, just a comment is that what's interesting about this for me is it doesn't really make it into the Sherlock Holmes image like the Theostocker cap did and the pipe did and his other accoutrements. I guess William Gillette didn't use it in the play. Rathbone didn't use it in the movies, and so it didn't quite make it into the Sherlock Holmes gestalt. But which is why when I read, I remember a few years ago rereading the Six Napoleons, finding out this. Well, what do you know? He had a favorite weapon. Who would have thunk it? I didn't even, what you would think we'd all know that, right? You'd think that would be something that would be common knowledge about Sherlock Holmes, but it really isn't. It just didn't quite make it in somehow. So
I think the key is what you said about like the movies and the shows. It's not really in those, and I think that's key to it. I mean, I think
I'll bet if Gillette had used it, it would be in there. That's
probably. It's also not weird.
That's
like, I think more people know about the
got
Persian slipper with tobacco in it than they do about
that's true
the riding crop or hunting crop. Just because it's weird.
But also because it's about right, but it's also a part of the setting.
Yeah.
Of 221, which the crop isn't, though could be because it was there for Windibank, wasn't it? Real handy.
Right. He was hanging above the mantle, and he went, there's my crop, and he grabbed it and threatened him with the whip portion of it.
Yeah.
So, yes.
I wonder from now on when I see a 221B replica, I'm going to see if there's a hunting crop in there or not, if it's hanging on the
There you go.
All the ones I've seen, I wonder if any of them had that. I never thought to even look for one.
All right. Sandy again.
Yeah, I think it's very simple why they don't use it in TV and movies and so on and so forth. If you think about the number of people who actually ride horses in America, and we're talking about American things now, most people wouldn't know a riding crop if they fell over it because they've never been on a horse.
Right.
And most of the riding crops that are used on horses don't look like that anyway because they're not meant for. So the number of people in America who do hunting on horses is so small that most people would say, "What the heck is that?" or like, why is this thing with a string on it floating around in the scene in the movie? So if I were the director, I would say, put something else in there. Nobody's going to know what that is. Don't make people stop watching the movie to think in their heads what they're looking at.
Sure. Ginny, and then Shayna.
I found it interesting all the way through the whole canon. I have noticed this many times. He always seems to be carrying the appropriate weapon, but he doesn't know what the situation is going to be necessarily, know what the situation is going to be ahead of time. And I just find it fascinating that, oh, this time the hunting crop would be the appropriate thing, and this time a gun would be better. And what if he took the wrong thing? I mean, how would he know which thing to take? I mean, sometimes, yeah, you kind of figure out what's going to happen, and so but so often it's like, it sure was convenient. He happened to have that at that right time.
He's Holmes.
Yeah, I was going to say that kind of kept going. I mean, James Bond is the same thing, right? He always goes and has all these wacky weapons that he can use in any particular situation. I just think that's just the secret agent, the consulting detective thing. Although I will say with the Redheaded League, I think he knew going into the vault, like, okay, I can use this. This would be good for close hand combat because I think he wanted to make sure Clay stayed alive. I mean, he wanted to capture him to get information would be my thought, even though we don't see that afterwards. That would be my take on it. If this guy's the fourth smartest man in London, I want to get to know him. So I think that would make sense why he didn't have a gun in that particular instance. But you're right, Ginny. It is kind of funny. He always has the right thing. Shayna.
I kind of feel like if you were to ask the average person on the street, like, what weapons would Sherlock Holmes carry? If they didn't say, a revolver, they'd probably say a sword cane, because I feel like that's something that turns up in adaptations. Like, I think it's a study in terror, like one of the, Holmes versus Jack the Ripper movies, where, he fends off a gang with a sword cane. And then, of course, it kind of reached an apotheosis in BBC Sherlock when Rycroft has a sword cane, which is also a gun.
Right, sure.
The sword umbrella. It's not even.
That's right.
Umbrella.
An umbrella, a sword umbrella with a gun.
Yes.
I have to admit, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that's great. And again, like all these different characters, that made me think of like Steed and Mrs. Peel. Steed had the umbrella that was bulletproof that you could use as a weapon. Yeah. Oh, that's
Mission
great.
Impossible. They always had the right tool, and then even when they planned ahead of time, something weird happens and it didn't work out, and so they just happen to have in their pocket this very specific electronic thing that works. It's like, huh?
Right.
Was it Doctor Who have the sonic screwdriver? Doesn't it do like everything? Right? If I recall from the old Tom Baker days.
Let's not forget Batman with the bat shark repellent.
Yes, that's right. Batman had the belt and the shark repellent in the 60s TV show. Oh, that's great. Any last comment? Because we're about out of time, my friends. This was really good. I had a lot of fun. Robin.
Okay, a bit of a sidebar, but in Victorian times, ladies could have a pistol ring which would fire a single bullet. Very handy if the date goes wrong, and it's the sort of thing that Irene Adler might have.
Yeah, there's another great weapon, right?
That's
cool.
The recoil from that.
Yeah. That's definitely a great way to end the date, though. I would have to say.
For close use only.
That's right. Oh, well, everyone, thank you so much for coming. I had a lot of fun researching this particular topic, and I'll have an article attached to the Redheaded League annotations in the 2026 Baker Street Almanac. So not this year's one, but the following, which is great because it gives me a little bit more time to do a little more research. I don't have a speaker yet for next month, but I promise it will not be me. And if you are interested in talking or leading a story, I know a couple of people did reach out. They just couldn't do January. So I will follow up with you all. But if there's anybody else who has a topic that they're interested in or would like to just lead us in a discussion of a story in the canon, love to have you participate. All right. And on that note, everybody, I look forward to seeing a number of you in January at the BSI weekend. Again, if you're there, make sure, and you see me and I don't recognize you, make sure you say hello, introduce yourself. I always love seeing you guys in person. So, and those of you in Colorado, of course, we got the Dr. Watson's dinner is coming up as well for us. And I just sent the email out about that today. So besides that, I look forward to seeing everybody again in February, and we can recap a little bit about BSI weekend, and maybe some of you all will become BSI members. Who knows? Okay. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Happy New Year
Bye-bye.
again.